Affairs hurt, and discovering infidelity is going to create more questions than answers. If you've just discovered infidelity, I feel for you. Through this video, it's for you, and we're going to cover the do's and don'ts of reacting to the affair. We're going to talk about how affairs happen from a divorce lawyer's perspective. We're going to get into whether affairs matter if there is a divorce, and how to leverage infidelity if you end up in the divorce process. The goal here is to help you get through this and process what's going on and what your next steps are, whether that's just getting time and space, whether it's trying to improve your relationship, or whether it's possibly going down the road of divorce. Discovering infidelity, the do's and don'ts. What's it like to discover an affair? Some of my clients have told me that it is worse than the death of a loved one. It is the ultimate betrayal. For many, it can feel like a punch to a gut, especially if you've been in a really long-term, multi-decade relationship. So acknowledge that discovering infidelity is trauma. That is a difficult thing to process, especially if, in your view, your life has otherwise been a nice life without trauma. Acknowledge that, give yourself some grace, recognize that what you're going through is probably one of the hardest things that human beings in civilized society have to confront. Try not to react after discovering infidelity. Less is more. This is easier said than done. But the less you do, the less you say after discovering infidelity, the more likely you're going to be in a spot to move forward successfully after the infidelity, whether that's in rekindling the relationship or ending the relationship. Do not tell anyone when you've discovered infidelity in your spouse. This is a hard one because the natural reaction is to go to the people who are in your support network when something like this happens. But it is best to keep your mouth closed, because if you start talking about what you're going through, it can be really hard to save face with your friends, your closest family, if you ever reconcile the relationship. So less is more. Try not to talk to anybody about your discovery of your spouse's infidelity. So what are you supposed to do if you discover in an affair your spouse being unfaithful? My professional opinion as a divorce lawyer is you need to see a really good therapist very, very quickly. The therapist is the best person to see, to process what's happened, to start unwinding this trauma, and to try to help figure out what you do next. Also, conversations with your therapist are confidential. The therapist is going to be there to help you as a person, whether it is to rebuild your relationship or move on from it. They're not going to cast judgment. They're not going to be at Thanksgiving next year and understand that your husband had an affair when they see you and your husband there, if that's what's happened. It's best to pay the money, get a private person who specializes in helping people through this type of situation. Instead of talking to friends and family, the therapist will help you decide what is best for you to do next. If you need to find one of those therapists, look at the description. StayMarriedFlorida.com has a lot of great ones in South Florida. If you're outside of South Florida, contact us. We'll find you a great one. It's best not to confront your cheating spouse, at least until you've seen a therapist. Maybe I'm biased on this as a divorce lawyer, but once you tell your spouse that you know about the infidelity, everything is out in the open. You have a less of a chance, in my view, of repairing the relationship if that's the route you go, and you are seriously going to curtail many possible available legal advantages if you do end up going the divorce route down the line. You preserve all of your options, give yourself the best chance for succeeding in any direction if you don't talk to your spouse about what you've discovered, at least until you see the therapist, and preferably until you've talked with an attorney. So what do you do if you've confronted your spouse about their infidelity before you've talked to a therapist or an attorney? You do the next best thing. Talk to a therapist, meet with them, meet with an attorney, find out the best way to move forward for yourself from the therapist, and understand your rights and legal obligations from the lawyer before you start discussing the affair more with your spouse. Also, it's just a really good idea after you've met with that therapist to explore options for whether there is a possibility to rekindle the relationship. Therapists will be able to help you decide that. So a divorce lawyer's take on why affairs happen. If you've recently discovered infidelity, there's probably a lot of things going through your brain, including how did this happen? There's a lot out there on this, and I spent a lot of time meeting with a lot of outstanding therapists in just my own day-to-day professional law practice activities, where I think I have a pretty good idea why affairs happen. Let me tell you. Why do affairs happen between normal, healthy people? The answer almost always is each person's needs in the relationship were not being met. Yes, your spouse may have cheated, but odds are if he's been unfaithful, that means that his needs in the relationship weren't being met and probably yours were not either. If you really talk to the therapist on this one, they'll explain to you that people naturally, it's like a human instinct, will seek out healthy relationships when their needs are not being met. And this is not always a sexual need. Usually it's more of just a need for feeling loved in the way that they feel loved the most. And that type of thing can decay over decades and decades of a relationship, especially if there's trauma involved. Sometimes people have been happily married for 30 years. Then a traumatic event happens, like the death of a child or a parent with a long drawn out illness that just causes a natural decay in the relationship. And that can lead to affairs. That's usually the deal with most people. Therapists are great for understanding this, and a really good marriage counselor combined with a great personal therapist for each person can help reconcile where the needs were not being met. So why do affairs happen with psychopaths? Psychopath sounds like a just extravagant word, but I use it to describe people who have a diagnosed condition to where they're not like everyday human beings. These are narcissists, sociopaths, people who might have bipolar disorders. They are a little bit different than other people. And why do affairs happen with those types of people? Sometimes it's an underlying addiction for them. The affair may not have anything to do with you. They may have an addiction. They may have a sex addiction. They may have a drug addiction. It could be all sorts of different things that just relate to who they are and their chemistry that caused the affair. That doesn't mean they're blameless or acceptable. You could have a narcissist as an example. Some narcissists, they value power and control in a relationship, and they don't know how to love. They don't feel loved. They value sex and money. And an affair might not get them money, but it sure gets them sex. And that's a common trend that we see in our law practice with women married to these narcissists who are serial cheaters. Usually it has nothing to do with our client and our client's ability to meet needs in their relationship or desire to. It's just the fact that their husband is a different type of person with a psychological diagnosable disorder. So when you recognize that for what it is, it's easier to not feel bad about it or take blame for it. This is complicated. You really need to be talking to a really good mental health professional to unravel this, but the affair might not be you if your spouse has one of these disorders. A great therapist can make a once healthy relationship better after an affair. That's my personal belief. We're not talking about being married to a narcissist here. This is just if you've had a relationship with somebody that's just decayed over time, sometimes due to a traumatic event or just time itself, a really good therapist with two willing people who are forward focused can help people understand where they are off in the relationship, what needed to be done to make the other person feel appreciated on both sides, as well as healing from the trauma and reestablishing trust and connections. I've seen it happen with a lot of people, and don't lose hope. You might be mad right now if you just discovered the affair, or you might be dealing with a spouse who's mad at you if you're the one who's unfaithful, but a really great therapist can make this situation better and in many cases make the relationship stronger than it was before the affair. So how do you decide if you stay in a relationship after your spouse has been unfaithful? One way that I've seen work a lot is when you discover the infidelity to not say anything to your spouse. Then go talk to a really good therapist and then invite your spouse to therapy, to marriage counseling. It's kind of a test. If your spouse is not interested in going to you to see a therapist, maybe even a therapist they pick to improve the relationship, it might be a tell to you that they have no interest in making the relationship better. And if they don't know that you know about the affair, and they're not willing to go to marriage counseling with you, that might be a pretty good indication that the relationship has run its course. It's time to move on, or this person's just never going to have the ability to do what they need to do to deserve to stay in a relationship with you. Discernment counseling is another great way to decide whether you stay in a relationship after discovering infidelity. Discernment counseling is a specific modality of therapy, that's a mouthful, to where the therapist, the marriage counselor, will work with you and your spouse in a logical way to determine if the relationship is worth salvaging for either of you. The idea is that you go through this discernment counseling to determine, hey, is there anything to fix here? If yes, then you go to another avenue of marriage counseling to try to fix the relationship, sometimes even with a different therapist. If you all figure out through the discernment counseling that the answer is no, there isn't a relationship to fix, the idea is then you can go to conscious uncoupling, basically ending the marriage, recognizing that it is a thing that has had its time pass and that everybody would be better if the divorce happened in the future, which can tend to lead to a more amicable divorce when the divorce ends up needing to happen. Moral of the story here is affairs are complicated. It is best to get professional advice from an outstanding therapist before you talk to your spouse about the affair, and to allow you to process how to move forward in the best way for you. It's okay to be upset, but going this route gives you the best ability to understand, is this a relationship you want to stay in and to improve the relationship or try if that's your desire, as well as to lead to a divorce path. If divorce has to happen, that is not an agitated one, that is one that's more on amicable terms if possible. None of this might be possible if your husband has one of these personality disorders, like if he's a narcissist or similar, but it's worth really thinking about this stuff and talking to a therapist before you do anything with divorce. Does infidelity even matter if you're going through a divorce? The answer is it probably does. There's a common misconception that when you're getting divorced, it doesn't matter if somebody's had an affair or been unfaithful or not. I just see that misconception is not true. The infidelity of a person can matter as it relates to what you're entitled to receive in the divorce, in the case of property division, sometimes even in alimony. And this is because sometimes the law provides that. Sometimes it's because judges are people too. A lot of divorce cases just have a judge, not a jury. That's how it works in Florida. And that judge, if they find out that your spouse has been unfaithful, might have a specific sympathy to you. Also, affairs can be very relevant for divorce strategy. So don't just think because your spouse has been unfaithful that it won't have any impact on the divorce. It certainly can, and you should talk to a lawyer about that. So how do affairs affect judges? Well, it's said a lot that judges don't care about affairs in divorce court. That might be true for some, but you have to understand judges are people, and if that judge went through a divorce themselves where their spouse was being unfaithful, that could affect them if they just had it happen to a family member or a very close friend. Even the old crotchety judge that's been on the bench for decades, who's always been thought to not care about affairs, could have just had something happen in their life or within their circle of influence to where now they care, or they might just look at you, hear your story at a trial, and that could have a teeny weeny impact on them deciding something in your favor. So how do affairs matter under the law? In Florida, they come into play in a few different ways. First, a lot of the things that have to happen in a divorce, such as alimony or property division, they have certain balancing tests that take into account equity, which means the judge can really decide a lot within certain predefined guidelines. So with those types of areas of judicial decision-making, if the judge hears that your spouse was unfaithful and that's important to that judge, it could be a little factor to throw them over the edge in ruling in your favor on making the amount of alimony a little bit higher, about changing the valuation or valuation date of an asset, possibly, at least in Florida, probably for other stated reasons, but in their mind, giving you a little bit more of the assets. So it can matter. In terms of black and white, how does an affair matter under the law? In Florida, it usually comes down to what is the money that is spent on the affair. So, if your spouse is going in and buying a Rolex for their paramour, well, the cost of that Rolex is going to result in there being less money to spend. So you're going to get a credit for that amount of money. And that's usually where most of the evidence on affairs becomes legally relevant. That's the pathway to getting evidence about affairs in front of a judge so that it can have an impact on them as they can decide these other parts of the divorce. So what about taking advantage of infidelity in the divorce case itself? I'm a firm believer in your spouse's infidelity possibly giving you an edge when it comes to divorce strategy. One way to take advantage of your spouse's infidelity is practical. If he is off cheating and you have not confronted him about it, you can get prepared for the divorce while he's off screwing around. His mind's on other things. Your mind can be on your legal strategy, getting the documents that you need to allow the divorce case to move more smoothly, meeting with a therapist, trying to figure out what you want your life to be like after the divorce. You can do all of that with the peace of mind that it's the right thing for you to do because your husband is out doing other things with other people outside the marriage with his eye off the ball. Filing for divorce can also cause a cheating husband to be caught off guard. When you file for divorce and you haven't confronted your husband about an affair, they usually are caught with their pants down, sometimes literally. You have a first mover advantage in this situation, and that can lead to your husband, who might have otherwise fought you hard in a divorce, coming to the table quickly because he knows you got him beat, or you might know, and you're ready and you're moving forward while his head has been in other places. That can sometimes, with some men, give you a strategic advantage that gets everything over with before it starts. This is not true for all men. If you're dealing with a narcissist, they may not care, but sometimes it does work. Affairs also can give you a strategic edge when your spouse has a soul. If you file for divorce and your spouse knows they've been cheating, if they have a soul, might feel bad. They might feel guilty. They probably should. And in that situation, they may be more willing to make a very generous deal with you because they know that they have not acted right. They have not done the right thing. They have broken that trust that was supposed to be the core of your relationship. So if you don't talk to your husband about his affair and you go and you file for divorce and he knows he's been cheating, he might come to the table early on and accept or propose a more generous settlement offer than had you confronted him about the affair and more time had went by. Again, this doesn't always work, but sometimes it can be to your advantage, and you should talk to a lawyer about this. You should be talking to a lawyer if you're thinking about divorce and have discovered your spouse's infidelity. Talk to your lawyer. The laws and judges are different in different states and different counties. Talk to the lawyer to try to figure out how you might be able to capitalize on your spouse's infidelity, if possible, in your divorce case. My recommendation to you is have these conversations with an attorney or several of them before you talk to your spouse. Because once the cat is out of the bag about the affair, a lot of these strategic advantages are far less effective. So talk to an attorney. If you're not getting advice that you resonate with, talk to a few of them. That's usually the best case. And try to see where in a divorce strategy does your spouse's infidelity fit in. So this is the end of this topic, and I hope this has been helpful to you. My heart goes out to you if you've recently discovered infidelity. Please check out the description below for some more resources that could be of help to you. If you're all processing this, it's usually good to get more information. Check out our website, divorceinformationbooks.com, link in the description. We've got a lot of different books on the divorce process. If you are looking to talk to a therapist, staymarriedflorida.com is a great resource to find somebody in your area. And if you're at the point of where you're looking to talk to an attorney, which is usually a good idea if you've discovered infidelity, my firm represents cases in the Southeast Florida area from Vero Beach south to Miami, and our firm is growing. It may be expanded by the time you're seeing this. So check out the link in the description to get in touch with us and have a conversation with one of my partners or myself. I hope this has been helpful. Until the next time.